come out because, look, blue sky, couple of fluffy clouds. That's what we want every day for getting a good photograph or two, or shot. And so I need to explain the next step. Imagine, the next step isn't complete, by the way. I've just run out because there's blue sky and clouds. So things are a bit scruffy, but imagine 1944, D-Day didn't quite go as well as expected, and the advance, or the Western Front, advanced towards Berlin a lot more slowly, and things like the winter campaign, particularly in the Ardennes, kind of bogged down a bit more First World War-ish. Imagine, see, the thing is, this goes through my mind often with a great chill that goes up and down my spine. Just imagine if the Panzers had been allowed to block the British, Commonwealth and American troops getting onto the beaches on D-Day. It would have been a tougher situation, and that is something that kind of, you know, every so often I just get that sense of, oh goodness. There are multiple universes apparently, and in many of those universes that happened. So thinking about that, imagine if the Second World War went on for a couple more years. Imagine if Hitler was able to do all kinds of deals with all kinds of folk, or maybe he was ousted and other fresher minds were put in place. Imagine that. Well, the fight would have gone on. One of the things is, I'm always fascinated that the Centurion tank didn't quite make it to the Second World War. Things like that. But what if boffin development in Britain had been pushed harder and this had happened? This has fascinated me since I was a kid. This is, I mean, what ifs aren't that great because you can just roll into all kinds of oblivion, but this has been with me for a long time, so I decided to do it. I may, once I've kind of got this stabilised, I may redo it as green and brown, because I was looking at plenty of images of large bombers, things like the Halifax, where right up to the end they were green and brown camouflage. But this is basically it. This is that next step for me, and we'll see where we go now. So that's the project. So the next thing is, join me in an experiment. Okay, so this is just an experiment. Don't judge the whole thing on this. I know a lot of people kind of skip through, so they won't get this. But for those who go, you know, stick with it, you will. This is an experiment with heavy weathering. Not just a lot of it, but like using a big brush, wiping with very thick tissue and all of that kind of thing to create very large brush strokes and marks. The reason I'm going through this is because I often start weathering like that and then fine tune it, and I'll leave the model lying around and I'll glimpse it and go, oh, what's that? Because it's alien to what to what the finished product is, so I'm less used to seeing that kind of thing. But for a moment, for that flash, that glimpse, it looks very real. And that's how, it's kind of the same principle as how things like ship, the flash camouflage works. That glimpse, that momentary flash. It's also how Impressionist paintings work. And if you see those in the right light, in the right location, they can be some of the most startlingly real. I would suggest viewing the Haystacks by, I think, is it Monet? Can't remember. Manet. One, blah, 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 can't remember. Anyway, Haystacks, extraordinarily three-dimensional. Despite them being in a field and being hay, there's an awful lot of blue and purple, and they're shocking. So here we go. So this is it. You know, I've kind of over stressed it now, haven't I? I've overblown it, but this is the basics. This is, and I want to use the stark light as well, very bright light, but also bands of shadow here and there. So I want to see how this goes, and so I want to look back at this and see what it looks like on film, because glimpsing it, having it sitting there near the TV, just glimpsing it out of the corner of your eye, I keep going, oh, okay, I must learn from this. So that's what we're doing. And thoughts and comments obviously would be welcome, but I will pursue doggedly this strange goings on. Another reason is why I feel confident to slap the paint around, is because I've made my mind up. I will be overlaying the grey with brown. Overlaying. Goodness me, what a piece of one-upmanshipy blurt that was, overlaying. I'll be painting over the grey with some brown, won't I? None of this airy-fairy mucking around. Overlay. Anyway, so here's me Thunderbird 2, looking rough, because it's been in the war, because it's being used on a sort of permanent basis, constant, no rest, no time for tidying up, just necessary running repairs. And there's a channel on the British TV, these are digital channels, channel 81, Talking Pictures TV, which runs an awful lot of Imperial War Museum footage, and some extraordinary close-ups of in-action aircraft in particular, showing incredible weathering, the likes of which I hadn't imagined, because it's so heavy, because these aircraft are going through this constant, constant use, and also extraordinary slapdash paint jobs, not only patching up the camouflage here and there, but on the markings, and I'll come back to that another day. A lot of the markings are clearly stenciled originally, but then touched up. Touched up is again over sophisticating, but slapdash repair work, and it is really incredible. Anyway, one last little bit, and then I think I'll finish this episode. I'll paint it brown and we'll get another episode. So we need the pod down at some point, don't we? And I'm going to, when I do further painting, I'm going to redo, no, I'm not going to redo, I'm actually going to do the interior, so to speak. But here's the pod, and here's its contents. Because if we're moving into 1945 to 6, then we can have some Centurion tanks, can't we? Which is another one of those, ooh, I'd like to have seen that up against things like the Tigers, because this is the first really good tank that the British came up with for a very, very long time, in my opinion, and I am very opinionated. So here we are with some 6mm tanks, and I believe they are by Heroics and Ross, and they're really nice. So a simple paint job for them, but yeah, that's what I've been aiming for over time. So now we will brown the grey and probably work on slightly less heavy-handed weathering. I got these tanks off eBay, and this was just the number that came, So that's the number I've got out. I know it's a lot, but I'm also imagining it being like a double deck inside, seeing as it hasn't got Thunderbird 4 or any of the other huge machines in. So yeah, I think if we double deck the interior of that pod, we can get these tanks, this many tanks to come through. So at last, a childhood dream is coming true. It's tragic, really, isn't it? I consider it a tribute to Jerry Anderson and to boffindom around the world. It takes great minds to come up with a machine like Thunderbird 2. I've always been impressed by it. There we go. So thanks for watching. That's all for now on this, but it's not the end. And let's see what comes next.